The long-awaited early access launch of Path of Exile 2 is finally here with a total of 6 of the planned 12 classes available to play. They run the gamut from heavy-hitting strongmen, to quick and nimble dexterity-focused champions, to magically powered badasses, and a few wholly unique hybrid classes as well. Even the most basic of the bunch require a bit of explaining to understand what they truly excel at, so before you make the all-important decision of what class to start with, here's a breakdown of all 6 starting classes in Path of Exile 2's early access. If you like to hit things and watch them utterly explode regardless of the harm that it may put you through to land said hit, Warrior may be your cup of tea. This class is all about explosive melee AoE damage coming from a combination of slams, shouts, and heavy but slow melee weapons. A core part of the Warrior's game plan is tied to his rolling slam skill. This move is a slow-moving double slam attack, with the first slam doing decent damage and stun on its own, but the second hit dealing much more damage in a larger AoE. One important thing to note about this skill is that there's a small cancel window in between the 2 slams. So if you want, you could stop the second slam from coming out with a quick melee attack and use a different skill instead. This little nuance makes it a very versatile move that's very satisfying to play around with, allowing you to engage without committing to the big slam, or giving you a quick AoE attack that you can basically spam instead of your basic attack. Warriors can also lay down a bunch of delayed explosion style moves, like Earthquake and Shockwave Totem, which allow them to set up big damage if they can keep an enemy locked in place for a few seconds. Much of the big damage from Warrior though will come from Bone Shatter, a skill that will highlight enemies that are close to being stunned with a little orb of light. Once they're highlighted, you can use Bone Shatter to use an incredibly strong AoE melee attack that deals massive damage and stun, typically causing other nearby enemies to become close to stunned, opening them up for another Bone Shatter. As you can see, there's a surprising amount of finesse to Warrior in Path of Exile 2. This is not a class that's about mindlessly jumping into the fray and turning on autopilot. Its skills benefit greatly from animation cancels, precise timing, and smart engagements. Do you like to harness the power of the elements? What about becoming the master of time and space? If so, then the Sorceress is exactly what will scratch that itch. With the Stormweaver Ascendancy, this class will let you bend the elements to your will, freezing, igniting, and shocking enemies into oblivion with the many elemental support mechanics the Sorceress has to offer. While all classes can spec into elemental attacks, the Sorceress is the only one that can truly master them all together for some unique and powerful effects. If you're looking for something truly new for this class, instead of just ice, fire, and lightning, the Sorceress's Chronomancer takes on time as a new power for you to wield. You'll be able to stop the battlefield in the middle of a fight, and even rewind time to reset things like skill cooldowns, life, and mana. Off the rip, the Sorceress won't be the tankiest of any of the bunch, but with some careful planning around resistances and scaling your energy shield, she can be hard to bring down in a battle, especially with skills like Frost Wall that is as offensive as it is defensive, preventing enemy projectiles from reaching you, drawing aggro, and freezing enemies right where they stand. And that's on top of its powerful cold explosion when damaged enough. Pair that with support like Cast on Freeze, and you'll be able to hurl giant, cold space rocks to obliterate anything that comes near you. The Mercenary is great for newcomers to the ARPG space, or fans of top-down shooters. When talking with game director Jonathan Rogers about creating this unique newcomer to Path of Exile, he discussed taking a lot of inspiration from games in the shooter space, and it definitely shows. While not as fast to fire as the Ranger is off the bat, the Merc boasts an impressive set of powerful attacks from the crossbow that mimics a shotgun, assault rifle, grenade launcher, and pistol. One of the most useful combos that will get you through all of Act 1 is using fragmentation rounds with a lightning support gem, the explosive grenade slotted with multiple projectiles, and the second wind skill, which will give you double the ammunition. You will likely be pulling a lot of enemies towards you as you lure them in with one of your abilities, and keep them at range as much as possible. However, there are several ways to approach your build with the initial unlocks. Once you get fragmentation rounds, you can fire in a burst and combo it with ice to great effect. If you hit a frozen enemy, the rounds will consume the freeze and cause an explosion of shrapnel all around. There's nothing quite like the Mercenary in any action RPG of this sort of ilk. So if you want to go into Path of Exile 2 with a whole new type of experience, the Mercenary is a great pick. If you're a fan of high-risk, high-reward melee glass cannon style characters, the Monk will fit you like a glove. An intelligence, dexterity-focused hybrid, the Monk is basically a martial arts mage, alternating between fast and agile quarterstaff techniques, mobility-focused palm strikes that are designed to target weak or nearly stunned enemies, and incredibly powerful screen-clearing magic attacks. A big part of the Monk's playstyle, especially in the early game, involves the 1-2 punch of building up power charges with his Killing Palm skill and then using them to power up Falling Thunder. Falling Thunder is a lightning slam attack that emits outwards in a cone shape, but the crucial thing to know is that this skill can be powered up with magic orbs that can be obtained by using Killing Palm. To use Killing Palm, you must damage an enemy to the point where they are nearly dead, at which point a blue orb will appear above them, marking them as executable. Every time you kill an enemy with Killing Palm, you'll get an orb that will power up Falling Thunder up to 3 times. A level 3 Falling Thunder is basically a screen wipe. It extends outwards and even beyond what the screen shows, and anything that does survive will very likely be easy pickings for either more Killing Palm strikes or one of the Monk's other, less powerful spells. Falling Thunder is great for when you're swarmed by regular enemies, but not so great for boss battles. For those, he's got Tempest Spell, which can be dropped near an enemy after landing 4 strikes, and once it's in play, you can attack it to basically reverberate your attack in a small AoE for extra damage. More importantly though, the bell will absorb elemental damage, allowing you to hit it with a single spell or attack, and then continuously inflict elemental damage by hitting the bell with any of your skills. By doing this, you can very easily freeze, ignite, or electrocute a boss and deal big damage to them. Of course, the glass part of the glass cannon moniker means that the Monk is quite squishy and very much relies on the mobility granted by skills like Killing Palm, Staggering Palm, and Vaulting Impact to escape bad situations and reposition to be able to make the most of his big AoE spells. If you can mitigate that weakness, the Monk is definitely one of the most fun and active playstyles in Path of Exile 2. The dexterity-driven bow and arrow class is a staple of any ARPG, and Path of Exile 2's Ranger is one of the most unique takes on the classic archetype yet. The intent behind the Ranger was to capture the feeling of Legolas from Lord of the Rings by having it be a class that's highly mobile, magical, and above all else, one that makes you feel like you're in control of every arrow that you release. To that end, you'll have a number of different arrow types at your disposal, each with a very specific use, along with tools that enhance those arrows. For example, one of the main arrow types that you'll be using from the outset are lightning arrows that will chain to a nearby enemy, dealing damage to multiple enemies at once. But you can actually enhance this effect by dropping lightning rods that will stick into the ground and essentially act as conduits to extend lightning chains even further, allowing the same lightning bolt to strike the same enemy multiple times and spread out to enemies that are further away to be able to take out entire groups at once. The Ranger also has a poisonous arrow that deals constant DPS over time to bosses, with the wrinkle being that the poison effect does not stack with multiple arrows, so you must keep track of when the poison wears off and remember to reapply the effect to maximize the damage. Not super helpful against a large group of enemies, but what's really cool is that later on, she'll get a vine trap that can ensnare multiple enemies and slow them down, and if you use a poisonous arrow to shoot the trap, you can apply poison to all ensnared enemies at once. As you'd imagine, the Ranger is a very squishy class, and playing the game of keep away is going to be very important. Fortunately, she's got plenty of ways to put distance between her and her foes, and then capitalize on that distance. Chief among those is her escape shot that allows her to leap away while firing an ice arrow to freeze or slow any pursuers. While they're slowed, she can charge up a snipe that does huge damage if charged and released at precisely the right time, which is very satisfying to land. So if you don't mind having to run away from danger quite a bit and set up traps and slow your foes down, the Ranger is able to output big damage very quickly once the battlefield is set up a bit more in her favor. The Witch's primary abilities involve resurrecting corpses to fight on her behalf. The minions come in different varieties. Skeleton minions that will remain on the field until their life pool runs out, only to be automatically regenerated after a brief cooldown, and temporary minions that require corpses and will be available for a short period of time after being brought to life by one of the Witch's spells, such as Unearth or Raise Zombie. Resurrecting the dead isn't all the Witch is good for. It's also a caster class with a heavy emphasis on debuffs and damage over time. So while your minions attack, you can also cast spells like Contagion, which begins by targeting a single enemy, dealing a steady amount of chaos damage over a fixed period of time. If an enemy dies with Contagion active, the spell spreads like a disease to nearby enemies, becoming more and more potent every time it spreads. On her own, the Witch is fairly weak, with limited mobility options and lacking in powerful skills that can quickly bring down a pursuing tough elite or a swarm of enemies. But if given the opportunity, and the corpses, to fully summon her army, she can output a lot of damage very quickly, while also being able to focus on dodging attacks while her minions and damage over time spells do the heavy lifting. And that's just a quick breakdown of what each of the 6 classes currently available in Path of Exile 2's Early Access are all about. Thanks for watching, and for more Path of Exile 2, keep it here on IGN.